What I want to discuss with you this evening is very interesting and powerful custom that we observe exactly 5 times a year. One of those, of course, is going to be this coming Shabbos. So that is the practice of shouting out the words Chazak, Chazak, v'nitchazek at the conclusion of each of the 5 books of the Torah. So with the double parasha this Shabbos, that's Behar and Bechukotai combined, we finished the third book, sorry, the count of my fingers, third book of the Torah, finished the book of Vayikra. And when we finished the last Aliyah, Shvi, of the Torah reading, and then at the very end, the congregation calls out, and then the Balkur responds, the words Chazak, Chazak, v'nit Chazek, which means literally strengthen yourself, and let us strengthen one another. Chazak, Chazak, from the word Chazak means strong. So Chazak in this form is the instruction. Be strong, and let us all together strengthen one another. This graphic here I found and I hope there's no copyright here, on a website called the Academy for the Hebrew Language, which is a fascinating website, because the Academy for the Hebrew Language actually, they study Hebrew, and it's the origin of words. And of course, the origin of most words in Hebrew are biblical, and you'll see this now in a moment as well. And so it's a fascinating website. And sometimes, there's a modern Hebrew word, and I won't know where it's from, and end up stumbling upon this website. Now, why am I even pointing this out? Because the correct grammatical form is, as you see it here, chazak, chazak, v'nit chazak. But it's not the way it's said. The way we call it out in Shu is actually the words chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. Why I say that the correct form is the former, and that's why the Hebrew Academy for the Hebrew Language actually suggests that wording. It's not a halachic suggestion; it's a grammatical suggestion. You'll see in a moment. Now, what's the idea of calling out, strengthen one another? So let's go back to the sources. And where does this come from? This expression. So this is actually the beginning of the book of Joshua. And Joshua, the new leader of the Jewish people, right after the passing of Moshe, there in Joshua chapter 1, Joshua takes over the leadership, and Hashem instructs him as to how he would be a good leader. And one of the things Hashem says to him is, let this book of the Torah never leave your lips, recite it day and night, so you may observe faithfully all that is written in it. Only then will you prosper in your undertakings, and only then will you be successful. And Hashem then says to him, Chazak ve'ematz, be strong and resolute. As I have commanded you, be strong and resolute. Do not be terrified or dismayed. Hashem is with you wherever you go. So from these 2 lines, we actually learn a number of laws regarding Torah reading. One of which is that when you read the Torah, you actually, so when you come up from Aliyah, when you actually hold the Eitz Chaim, as it's called, the tree of life. That's the handles of the Torah, which were given that name for very obvious reasons. And when we return the Torah to the Ark, we actually call out, sing the verse, Eitz Chaim Hila Machazikim, but it's a tree of life for those who hold on to it, which is a verse in Tanakh as well. So because of that, we actually have to hold the Torah. We have to hold the handles while we're being called up. If you're reading your own Aliyah, then obviously you can hold both. Otherwise, you've got to share the holding with the Balkar who holds the left side and you hold the right handle. When we're making the brachas, the Balkar actually lets you hold both handles together. And one holds them and doesn't let go, because that's in a physical expression, this idea of not letting go of the Torah, that it doesn't leave us. So we want to maintain physical contact with it right through. I know some people lift the Torah and put it back down at different places, and customs differ while you're making the brachot. I have a youngster in my shul, I don't know where he picked up the custom, but he actually lifts it and drops it almost, and makes a big noise as he goes about doing that. You got to be careful not to be too demonstrative about it, but the idea is that you really hold on to the Torah all the time. So that's the idea of lo yamush. But if we look in the Shulchan Aruch, he then says something else that's very interesting, based on those words of Hashem, Chazak ve'ematz, be strong and resolute, have courage. Is ometz. Be strong and have courage. So this is Shulchan Aruch at the very end of the laws of Torah reading. The one reading the Torah must hold the Sefer Torah the time he makes the blessing. That's the text of the Shulchan Aruch. And then in smaller print is the writing of the Ramah. I'll tell you about him in a moment. The Ramah says, and they base this tradition on the verse from Joshua, do not let this book of teaching cease from your lips, be strong and resolute. So that's Joshua, as we said, chapter 1, verses 8 and 9. From this, we have the tradition to say to the person who finishes reading from the Torah each time, Chazak. And this is now let me give you a bit of a background to the bold print and the smaller print, because it's actually how in the actual Shulchan Aruch, if you looked at the page, you would find it that way there. Bigger letters and then smaller letters. The Shulchan Aruch was written by Rabbi Yosef Karo, who was Sephardi. And of course, his rulings right through Shulchan Aruch follow the Sephardi tradition and custom, as was handed down and observed by them all through the years. And there was then a thought that there had to be an Ashkenazi Shulchan Aruch written for all those of us. I think everyone here is Ashkenazi, looking at the list. And we follow slightly different customs. Eventually, that's not what happened. Rabbi Moshe Isserles, Krakow, he actually wrote glosses. He wrote comments within the text of the Shulchan Aruch. It was incorporated in every edition of the Shulchan Aruch. You will find both of them side by side. So you have the original writing of Rabbi Yosef Karo and the glosses of Moshe Isserles, the Ramah, Resh Mem Aleph, Rabbi Moshe Isserles, as they apply to the Ashkenazi community. Sometimes they're not exactly the same rules in the Shulchan Aruch. Here, he seems to be complementing more than arguing with. Now, why did I mention all this background? Because interestingly, what does he say? He says, going back, right? There were two rules. The one came from this verse here, right? The book shall never leave you. Okay, that's why we hold it. And then he says, that's based on this verse, and then he adds, because Hashem says to Yeshua, Chazak ve'ematz, when you finish reading the Torah, you say those words. That happens to be a Sephardi custom. If you go to Sephardi shul and you have an aliyah, then instead of the Ashkenazi form shkayach, which really means yasher kochacha, or may your strength, just grow, but they use the words chazak ve'ematz. Chazak ve'ematz. So that's taken from that verse in Yeshua. It's just ironic that the Ramah, here he is, Ramah in the Shulchan Aruch, actually mentions the custom which is more Sephardi in nature, and we Ashkenazim have a slightly different version. So this is where the expression chazak take its root, and we can see the connection with Torah. Chazak ve'ematz is something that Sephardi Jews wish each other after every aliyah. The practice we're talking about tonight is something we do at the conclusion of each of the books of the Torah. So it's more of a significant conclusion, what you call a siyum, or an ending. And we have the words Chazak, Chazak, Venit Chazek. Those have a different origin altogether. It's not from Joshua. That is from the second book of Samuel, Shmuel Beit. And there's a point at which King David's army is sandwiched between two enemy nations, Aram and Ammon. And now, they've got to fight a war on two fronts. So if Yoav, who was chief of staff, was stressed, we must maybe kind of contact him and tell him that Israel right now is facing a war that has far more than two fronts. But clearly, the enmity from the neighbors was nothing, and knew it was already going on, back then. And Yoav develops the following strategy. He is, sandwiched from the front and the back, and so he takes a selection of the best soldiers of Israel, and he gets them ready to face the Arameans. And then that's the people from Aram, and then there's also the Ammonites, and to fight them, he takes some troops and puts them into the hands of his brother, Avshai, and says to Avshai, you are going to fight the battle against the Ammonites. And then he says the following. If Aram proved too strong for me, you come to my aid. If the Ammonites prove too strong for you, I will come to your aid. And then the famous words, Chazak v'nit chazek. Only once Chazak, but let's be strong and resolute for the sake of our people of the land. Basically, let's be there for one another, and make sure that if we're in trouble, you'll be there for us, and if you're in trouble, I will be there for you. We will be there for you. Chazak v'nit chazek. Let's be strong and strengthen one another. And it seems clear that the wording and the practice that we have of saying that greeting at the end of the books of the Torah, the wording at least is taken from this book of Shmuel Beit, and the famous words of Yoav, who was the chief of staff in the army of King David. Why Chazak? Why strength? So the source of this is from the Talmud in Brachot. In Brachot, the sages tell us, there are four people who need chizuk strength. And these are the four that need bolstering, constant effort to improve. Torah, Masim Tovim, good deeds, Tefillah, prayer, Derech Eretz, and occupation. And the Talmud then goes on, but we're really only interested in the Torah that requires chizuk. We're interested in the fact that the Torah needs strengthening, because that's what we're doing here. We're kind of finishing a section of the Torah and wishing strength, wishing chizuk, saying chazak. So we're only going to study together the first portion of the elaboration in the Talmud. The Talmud says, well, let's find some biblical proof, some verses to support this. Why is it that we need strength for Torah and Maasim Tovim, for Torah and good deeds? And here it is. This is the instruction to Joshua. Same place. This is a previous verse, because I was showing you verses 8 and 9. This is verse 7, right? Hashem says to him, Chazak ve'ematz me'od lishmor v'lasot kechol Torah, right? So that's only be strong, be extremely courageous, observe and do all the Torah. And the verse continues that Moses commanded you, don't deviate right or left. You may succeed wherever you go. Yeah, that's the verse we read earlier. Observe refers to Torah study, and do refers to good deeds. And the Torah, the Talmud therefore says it means be strong in Torah and be courageous in good deeds. So we have a source. We know that being strong in Torah is derived from that really went very far. Yeah, that being strong in Torah really comes from that idea of Joshua being encouraged, and the Talmud links that with Torah and good deeds. What is the deeper meaning of being strong in Torah? And I'm going to share with you a text that comes from the Maharal. Maharal wrote prolifically, like extensively. I've got a library of the books of Maharal. They're probably about 12, 14 volumes, read books. I got it as a bar mitzvah present from Chazon Stern, who was a chazan of Mashu and also my bar mitzvah teacher. Imre Stern, a Hungarian Jew, remarkable man. Anyway, he bought that set for me. I was very fond of my father. So the Maharal wrote prolifically. And in one of the books, and we're going to read the text together in a moment, he actually shares with us the importance of strength in Torah. And basically, he says you need strength when something's hard. When things go easy, you don't need to be strengthened. But when things are rough, then you want to be strengthened. And this is his explanation for why we need to have this chazak when it comes to Torah reading, to Torah study. So as we saw, we read in Talmud Brachot, 32b, the sages say 4 things require bolstering: Torah, good deeds, prayer, and derech eretz, the way of the world, which means occupation, level, etc. The explanation is that everything that has an opposing force needs bolstering to oppose it. And the Torah needs much bolstering because humans are physical, material beings. And of course, the Torah is the polar opposite in that sense, and that's completely spiritual. A person needs a lot of bolstering to oppose the material. As for good deeds, people need something to oppose the Yetzer, which opposes them. So it's the same idea that to do mitzvahs, you've also got a Yetzer Hara, and that's going to be a new way. So Torah mitzvot requires strengthening, ongoing strengthening, which is why there's that blessing. You want to be connected to Torah, you have to have that strength. And we turn that into a little bit of a ritual or a short ceremony when we conclude a full and entire book of the Torah. And that's, of course, 5 times a year because there is 5 times, the 5th one being Simchas Torah, when the entire cycle of all the Torah readings are read. Next one by Midbar will be about 3 months, and then we'll have Devarim and the entire Torah concluded on Simchat Torah. So yes, as Maharal tells us, when something is hard, because there's opposition to it, you need to strengthen yourself. You're dealing with the Yetzer Hara. You're dealing with the Yetzer Hara. It was an entire raison d'etre, reason why it was created, why it was given to us, is to create balance, to create temptation. So because we're not living in a world where, it's a good world and everything is easy. God gives us an opposing force to really create freedom of choice. We don't need any special powers to be drawn to the world. It happens very naturally. We do ever need special strength and power to be drawn to the spiritual, to the Torah. Ancient rabbi once said, famously, the way God created the world is it's kind of so unfair. All the temptations of the world are right there in front of us. Every wandering, every lust, every pleasantness is there staring at us. Somewhere in a book on the shelf, there's mention of reward for mitzvot, but it's not right there staring at you in the eye. Had God created a world in which the reward is kind of staring at us in the face, the spiritual stuff, and the physical is hidden. It's like on a book on the shelf. Would be a different world, but that's not the world God created. God created a world in which there's real temptation, there's real challenge, and therefore, as a result of overcoming, we're going to grow. But that requires chazak, requires strength. And that's why over and over Hashem tells Joshua, chazak, in other places. We are told Chazak, and we connect that concept of Chazak with the public reading of Torah. Here is the wording from a siyum. So when you complete a tractate of the Talmud, and for those who studied Daf Yomi, just a couple of days ago, the tractate Menachot was completed, and the new tractate that Daf Yomi has started is Chulim, that began on Shabbos a few days ago. This is part of the siyum. This is part of the word that I said when you complete. Now, look at what we say. We don't say, we have completed tractate Menachot. We don't say we've completed it. We say, we'll return to you, and you'll return to us. Our minds on you, your minds on us. We will not forget you. You'll not forget us, not in this world, not in the world to come, so that it can come with us. What are we saying? We're saying that as we complete one section of Torah, we say we'll be back. It's not a goodbye. It's just a farewell, because we want to start other things, and we have that practice in Torah reading, for example, Simchas Torah, as I just mentioned. What do? We finish, call up a man called Chatan Torah, who is honored with the last portion of the Torah. Immediately as he finishes the last word of the Torah, everyone says Chazak, Chazak, Venit Chazek. We call up the Chatan Bereshit, and we begin reading from the very beginning of Genesis. I mean, really, it's the parsha of the next Shabbos. We could leave it for a day and say, "Oh, can have a break, and we'll start the cycle again." No, but our way is that as a cycle ends, we start Torah reading immediately once again, and that's the concept of Chazak, that we want strength. We don't say, "We're done, thank you, let's now have a party." But the kids always say, "Chazak, chazak, when it chazek, mommy baked the chocolate cake." That's how they used to say when they finished a section and they wanted to have a celebration at school. And that was just a diversion. It's not to start the next chapter, section, book, or whatever it was that they were learning in class, but rather to have a bit of a break and a party. And really, the meaning of the words chazak, chazak, and chazak. Let's have strength to start all over again. Let's not now that we've. And it's so important to be granted that strength when you've achieved. Because when you've completed, a friend who completed Daf Yomi some years ago, and that was a 7-year study of a page of Talmud a day until he finished all the volumes of the Talmud. It's a remarkable achievement, and he made a siyum. We had a party at a restaurant in Norwood. And then saying goodbye and sitting and having coffee at the end after the meal. He said, "Okay, I'm going to take a break now. I'm going to take a break now." It was very hard, 7 years. I said, "No, no, 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 you don't do that. I mean, you just finished." And when you make a siyum on the entire Talmud, you don't say, "Hadron alach, masechet, I will come back to you, tractate." You just actually publicly stood there and says, "Hadron alach Talmud Bavli. I will return to you, Babylonian Talmud." You can't 15 minutes later tell me, I'm done, I'm going to take a break. But that takes strength, because when you feel like you achieved, you want to kind of relax and say, I got to the top, I completed this. And that's when you need that extra injection of strength to be able to kind of pick up and get right back on the treadmill and carry on with those endeavors and those achievements. So that's quite an amazing, powerful lesson that we have to have. But anyway, let's go back to our readings here. So we say Chazak how many times? Well, actually 3, not exactly in those words. Here's a fascinating gematria I came across. Chazak, Chazak, Chazak. Okay, so Chazak is 100, which is a kuf. 7 for the Zayin, and 8 for the 8. So each Chazak is 115, and if you multiply 115 by 3, then you get to 345. Any thoughts on what that gematria signifies? Anyone know? No. You can put it in the chat. Like no one. Looks like no one. Gematria of Chazak times 3 is Moshe. Moshe, the mem is 40, the shin is 300, and the hey is 5. So in saying Chazak 3 times, we're actually alluding very much to the idea that the Torah is the Torah of Moshe, and he was the intermediary who gave it to us. So this we do kind of, 5 times a year. Our wording, as I said, is not Chazak, but Chazak, Vendit Chazek. And that's also a very, very powerful message with which I'm going to end. There's a bit of a halachic debate whether the person who was called up to the Torah should say those words or not. There's a view brought down halacha that would be considered a gap, an interruption, because you need to make the brachas. Sometimes I cringe in shul when people, make the brachas and then start having a conversation. Rabbi, what must I do now? Where must I hold? What must I do? Must I stay here? Must I stand here? Or whatever. Once you make a bracha, there should be, no gap, no interruption. You go straight into, the text. And at the end, the same thing. Once you finish reading the words of the Torah, the bracha should happen immediately, and engaging in conversation is prohibited. Do the words chazak vanit chazek form that kind of a interruption, break, a kind of digression that would be problematic before making the bracha. So those who say it's not to be done. The consensus is that the Balkara, and the Chaz, and the person who had the idea do say those words. So the entire congregation, as together with the person who was called up Chazak, the entire congregation will shout out Chazak vanit chazek, and then the Balkar will repeat the words, and then the person who had the aliyah will then make the final bracha. But it's very significant that we don't say just chazak, strength, but also let's strengthen each other, realizing that a lot of the strength that we have is not the power of the individual, but the strength of the community and the inspiration of the community. And Torah learning is not just an individual exercise, but in fact something that we do as a community together. That's why the dialogue is so important. The congregation says to the person who came up, be strong, and let's have strength. And he responds in the same way, so that we emphasize the power of Torah as it is practiced and studied by a community where one helps another, and in that way Torah remains strong. We're able to have the power to start again after we feel that sense of accomplishment, and we also have the power to stand against Yetzer Hara, who's doing everything possible to prove to us that the physical realities of this world are far more compelling, and as I said, doesn't have a hard job than the spirituality of Torah. That happens best within a community, within everyone shouting it out together. Thank you, and good night.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Very much.
Thanks, Rabbi.